Thinking, sensing, creating. The theory behind my architectural practice. First, let's begin. Why to think architecture? Thinking about architecture means pausing before drawing, observing before deciding, and sensing before designing. It means to understand that every project begins with a question, an intuition, or a tension that pushes me to look deeper. I discovered that theory is not distant. It is a way of activating my mind to understand the purpose behind every move. Thinking became part of the process because it helps me to recognize the value of a place, their symbols, human experience, and the intention behind what I create. And then we need to ask ourselves, where does architecture truly begin? For me, architecture begins when I connect with the site, when I look at it without rushing and start listening to what it offers and what it needs. I learned that a tentative observation is already an act of design, understanding wind, light, human scale, and cultural symbols. For example, Fraser helps me read symbolic patterns, while Vitruvio and Sevi guide me in recognizing what gives a place meaning. This initial sensitivity opens the door to an authentic project, one that grows from what the site reveals rather than from imposing ideas. Let's continue. What are the hidden patterns beneath a site? Well, analyzing a site is not just measuring it, it is reading it. I learned to observe its internal order, rhythm, tensions, and the invisible logics that structure it. Montagnolo's sense of place and Sterling anthropological reading of symbols helps me to understand its deeper meaning. I learned this to recognize that must remain, what must change, and what must be revealed through the project and its process. That guided me to ask myself, how do I turn chaos into a concept? A concept emerges when it gives meaning to the initial chaos. I learned to organize complexity by drawing on Alberti's critical reasoning, which taught me to use logic for coherence. Also, Palladio's geometric precision, which guided me toward proportion and harmony, and the material honesty of the arts and crafts movement, which remind me that the concept must be also authentic and tangible. And then let's go with the building. What story must this building tell? I realized that every project needs a narrative. Architecture communicates, and I must define the message I want to convey. For example, Fraser gives symbolic depth, while Sevi teaches me to use space as communication. I learned this so every space carries intention and the user can read what I want to express with this. Then, how does a space speak? Through form. Form is a language. I learned to create volumes that guide, surprise, or protect, drawing from Montagnola's topogenesis, that says that space and place generate meaning through the relationship between territory, form, and human experience. Then we have Sevi's spatial reading. I learned this so form becomes expressive rather than decorative. At the end, I learned this so that form stops being decorative and becomes an expressive tool that aligns with my initial intention. Then let's continue, but now with the user's perspective. How does the body move through my architecture? I learned that designing movement means shaping how the user experiences space. I drew on Charles Moore's theory, who saw architecture as a sequence of movements meant to be felt, not just observed. I learned this to create paths that guides and surprise, allow each step to reveal a different intention from the project. The next question is, how do I anchor meaning in a structure? I understood that structure communicates as well. Following Pevsner, I learned that constructive logic is an essential part of building message. I realized that every column, span, and join can reinforce the architectural concept, allowing the structure not only to physically support the project, but also to express its identity, its internal order, and its purpose with the space. And then I have to ask myself, when does a project become architecture? I discovered that a project becomes architecture when form, concept, intention, and experience begin to align. I follow Marina Weisman, who believes that architecture gains meaning when users can interpret it and find their own layer of significance. I learned this so recognize when an idea is mature, coherent, and truly ready to engage with the world and the people who will inhabit it. And finally, how do I communicate architecture as a thought? I understood that communicating architecture is an essential part of design act. I discovered through Norbert Schulz that communication means revealing the meaning of a place, making visible the intention behind every design choice. I learned this so I can think, write, and speak coherently, ensuring my projects not only exist, but also be shared, defended, and meaningfully thought. To conclude, what remains after this entire process? What remains is a way of thinking, a method that stays with me and evolves with every project. I realized that architecture is built not only outwardly but inwardly, in how I observe, connect, analyze, and create. And as long as I keep asking questions, I will keep growing as an architect.